Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. So the topic for today is daycare. And I know some of you are probably like, yeah, let's talk about this. What do you have to say? Why is this an important, pivotal, critical cultural topic? And some of you are like, oh, you know what? My kids are grown up. I don't care about this. Well, let me just stop you right there. This is a very, very important topic for everyone, whether you have children in daycare, whether you are a stay-at-home parent, whether you are a grandparent, whether you are young and don't have children yet. This is actually, we talk often about the culture war, right? How the left is trying to subvert our civil institutions or our cultural institutions, trying to disrupt the family unit. And they're being very effective doing this, right? We can see that in schools. We can see that in the medical field. I mean, obviously, we can see that in public libraries. We see that in children's books. We see this in the drag queen story hours. We see this in the drag shows for children. We see this in TikTok. All these different cultural aspects are being captured by the left and weaponized against us, weaponized against our children, weaponized against our family, weaponized against our country. This is, believe it or not, also a way that the left is trying to capture our children. Now, there's going to be some people listening to the show who are going to think, well, listen, I went to daycare myself, or I have children in daycare, and I don't know that this is my experience. And I would say to you, hear me out. Hear what I have to say, because I sit here in no... if you send your child to daycare, right, I'm not sitting here thinking of you contemptuously. I'm not thinking of you in a judgmental way. I know that when we talk about daycare, people don't talk about daycare because anything that has to do with parenting, especially that has to do with mothering, there's so much emotion that goes into it because we all care about our kids, right? We all care so much about our kids. We make decisions because we think those decisions are the best for our families, and which means that we think that the decisions that other people make, if they're different, aren't the best decisions, because otherwise we would make those decisions too. It's not necessarily judgment. It's just that we are making the best decision for our family. But I'm not sitting here judging you, and I don't think that my audience is going to be triggered the way that some people are triggered by this conversation, because I think very highly of you. I think that you are here listening to this show because you want to hear hard truths, because you want to be challenged by new information, because we are reorienting as a conservative movement. We're reorienting our entire world view on how we operate, from our home lives to our political lives to our social lives. And I think that this is food for thought. Whatever you decide to do with this information, I think that you will really want to hear this. So this all started with some controversy, with some drama. It happened about a week ago at a conservative conference. Alex Clark, host of the podcast Spillover, she works for Turning Point USA, gave a speech at a conference, and she talked about feminism. She talked about, it was a conference for young women, and she talked about lies that young women have been told. And one of those lies, she said, was about daycare. She said women have been told that they can find fulfillment by going to work, that their value is really found in the monetary value of their paycheck, and stay-at-home moms have always been, by the left at least, and by our culture at large, have been sneered at. Every stay-at-home mom knows this. Every woman knows this. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom or not, knows that stay-at-home moms get a little bit of the degrading treatment from working moms. That's simply, I'm not trying to start any more drama. That's simply the fact of the matter. And this is essentially what Alex Clark said about daycare. So take a look at this first.
When daycare was invented in the United States in the 30s, the goal was to be a last resort for the single moms, widows, and low-income families with no multi-generational help. But just like everything else, over time, it was twisted and accepted by society as the new normal. And let me tell you something, just because something is normal or common doesn't mean that it's right.
Okay, so after this speech, Media Matters writes a hit piece on Alex Clark and on this message, and singles out the fact that Alex Clark talked about daycare and talked about how daycare came into being and how women should discern whether to send their children to daycare and what information women should use to discern whether to send their children to daycare. And Media Matters, as Media Matters always does, wrote some pretty hideous stuff, which I'm going to read to you in just a sec. But first, I want to talk to you about revolutionary relief. Revolutionary relief is a huge game changer. The topical roll and gel capsules together work to provide you targeted pain relief. Applying the roll directly to your knees, elbows, neck, or back will bring immediate soothing relief as the gel capsules tackle internal pain and inflammation, giving long-lasting results. The secret here, you might be wondering, lies in the patented active ingredient called Canopia Active. It's derived actually from plants. It's 3,500% more effective than other products thanks to its water solubility and rapid absorption. Revolutionary Relief has given people the freedom to live without constant pain. And this is a problem for a lot of us, right? Almost everyone can benefit from using Revolutionary Relief because studies indicate that 52 million adults in the United States experience daily pain. That's a lot of us. Whether this pain is age-related or caused by exertion at work or during exercise or due to recreational activities like golf or tennis or pickleball, Revolutionary Relief aims to provide relief. There are several reasons you should consider trying Revolutionary Relief. The creators of the product offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee, showing their confidence in the effectiveness of the product. And for limited time, you can try Revolutionary Relief absolutely free for the first month. To order Revolutionary Relief, visit their website, revrelief.com/free. That's revrelief.com/free to order. You will not be disappointed. So after Alex Clark gave this speech talking about daycare, which a lot of people don't talk about or don't want to talk about because it's a very emotional topic. I understand why it's an emotional topic. Of course it is. It's what you're doing with your children. Media Matters wrote a hit piece about Alex Clark and about this point, and this is a little bit of what they said. Let me read this to you. I think you will find this as funny, but also kind of infuriating as I did. The author of this piece at Media Matters says, "I'm fascinated by Turning Point USA's Young Women's Leadership Summit for the same reasons I watch ABC's The Bachelorette. The dating show tries to awkwardly reconcile fundamentally opposed interpretations of gender roles in a woman's pursuit of an opposite-sex partner. The woman crowned as the Bachelorette each season represents a certain type of conformity. She's feminine, unattainable, a prize to be won, flirty, and non-threatening to masculinity, the ideal future wife. At the same time, her role is highly subversive to the traditional norms of courtship. She's dating 25 men at once. This scenario totally boggles the normative masculinity of the contestants pursuing her. This Young Women's Leadership Summit, which targets college and high school-aged girls, grapples with these same contradictions in a much darker and more prescriptive way. Speaker after speaker emphasized to the audience that they should become wives, mothers, and accessories to the astroturfed conservative movement rather than pursuing a demanding career. These themes are blah, blah, blah." Alex Clark, Media Matters writes, host of Turning Point USA's podcast directed at young women, and the face of this event opened the conference with what can only be described as an angry, judgmental lecture titled The Top 4 Lies of Modern Feminism. She opened by asking Young Women's Leadership Summit, "Are you ready to see this degenerate, rotten culture that we've been living in get a makeover?" I love that line, by the way. After applause, she praised the audience-themed outfits. For the next 30 minutes, she launched into a winding, pseudo-academic diatribe about the 4 lies of modern feminism, which, according to Clark, are birth control, abortion, fertility care, and daycare. And then she said, they called her speech sleepy and bizarre. And then she said, not only is Clark a highly successful political commentator with 2 podcasts in the face of a yearly conference, she is also, as she noted in her own speech, not a mother. Even more bizarrely, she was not giving opening remarks to a conference of mothers. So let's address that first, right? She doesn't have children. Alex Clark doesn't have children. My answer to that is, so what? So what? She's not allowed to have an opinion about daycare. She's not allowed to have researched this topic for herself. This is the most inane argument against what she has to say. In fact, I would categorize what she's doing. If I'm analyzing what she's doing, she's preparing because she wants to be a wife and she wants to be a mother. She wants to know how to raise her children. Preparation is prudent, especially in a culture that as soon as you become pregnant, as soon as you give birth to a child, inundates you with all this fear intended to usher you into the decisions that they want you to make about your kid. Preparing is exactly what young women should do. So that's a really stupid argument. But I would like to address this topic because of the cultural impact that the left's narrative on raising our children to be the next generation of Americans and how daycare plays into this. And I say this as a working mom, right? I'm obviously sitting here talking to you at my desk, in my office, in my studio. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. I do not have my 2.5-year-old daughter on my hip at this moment, which means that I am not the one taking care of her at this moment. Someone else is. And I would like to say, just to preempt criticism, that no, I don't send my daughter to daycare. In fact, I'm very fortunate to be in a situation where when I am working, my husband, who is a medical provider, is not working. He works the longer shifts, fewer days of the week, meaning, 12-hour days, a couple days a week. So we flip-flop work days, right? So we're very fortunate to be able to we don't even have childcare. We do our childcare ourselves. We raise our daughter, my husband and I. And that's the reason that I'm working. That's the reason that I'm able to work. I would not outsource my childcare because I believe it is such a fundamental responsibility and duty as a mother to raise your child. Again, I'm not sitting here feeling contemptuous towards women who send their children to daycare. I do, however, think that we should, as a culture, talk about what daycare does, the impact daycare has on children, not just as little children, but overall. And this is why this topic is so relevant. It doesn't matter if you're not a parent yet, you're not even married yet, whether you have young children, whether your children are out of past the age range of daycare, or whether you're a grandparent. It doesn't matter. This is a critical topic that we need to talk about. And I promise you, mark my words, this is going to become a much more pivotal cultural issue. So maybe you haven't heard a podcast talking about daycare yet. Maybe this is the first. Maybe Alex Clark is the first time that you heard someone talk about daycare, but I promise you, over the course of the next couple of years, this is going to become a much bigger issue. In fact, this is one of the times that conservatives are playing catch up, and I hate that. I hate when conservatives play defense. I want conservatives to play offense, but conservatives are playing defense because the left has recognized that what they call early childhood education, which, like pre-K and TK and all of these levels of school, and I say that with kind of a laugh because we know that a 2-year-old is not going to school, all of these different child care years that they've added to school are a way to form children into what the left wants them to be. That's why, and this isn't actually just Democrats. This comes from the Uniparty. So kind of liberal Republicans also want like universal free childcare and universal free pre-K and TK. This is the reason why Democrats have pushed this agenda for a really long time, and conservatives are playing catch up, and I hate that because this is the pivotal point that I want to make to you. The fundamental premise of daycare is that mothers and fathers have no value, that there is no benefit or there is no value to a mother taking care of her child or a father taking care of their child, that mothers and fathers are simply the same as a random adult meeting the basic needs like here's food and let me change your diaper. And this is false. This is statistically, scientifically, and morally wrong. I not only dismiss the idea that mothers and fathers serve no value as mothers and fathers, different than a hired employee taking care of your children, I reject that, and we all must reject that. It's something that the left has been very, very successful in capturing, and they've infiltrated this whole area. And it's partially, we should ask, like, why did this happen? How did we get to this point? It's partially due to feminism, as Alex Clark said. That's true. It is partially due to the feminist movement telling women that their fulfillment can be found outside of the home, that they should be free, they are equal to men, they should ape men and do the same things. That's all true, meaning like it's true that that's what it stems from. The narrative from feminists aren't true. It's also due, believe it or not, to the Industrial Revolution. It's due to the fact that in order to create the highest GDP for our country, well, companies need the largest, the biggest number of employees, including women. They need women in order to increase their profit. They need those employees. And so culturally, this has been pushed on us. Culturally, daycare has become normalized. Daycare has become the thing. In fact, there are even narratives that say that daycare is good for your child. It provides socialization that your child wouldn't get if they were home with their parents, which is kind of bonkers if you step back and think about what that means. That means that the left is telling you that it's worse for the child to be with the child's parents than it is for the child to be in a daycare setting. I think common sense tells us that that's ridiculous. Again, this is not to shame moms and dads who send their child to daycare. I actually think moms and dads especially moms here, want to know these facts, want to know the truth here, because like I said, it's the culture that has told us that daycare is necessary. But here's the thing, most moms, the vast majority of moms do not want to send their children to daycare. I'm going to tell you the actual statistic on that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about Students for Life. 2024 is right around the corner, and both parties recognize that young voters are going to play a key role in deciding the upcoming election. Students for Life Action is the only national pro-life organization working to turn young people against abortion, and as a result, they are facing constant attacks from pro-abortion radicals, including Antifa and a group called Jane's Revenge. You might be familiar with that group because they're the ones that organize protests outside of the Supreme Court justices and vandalized crisis pregnancy centers. Yes, that one. So Students for Life Action faces these attacks to the extent that they've even had to take legal action against universities who have tried to silence them for speaking the truth about abortion. I can tell you no other group gets under the skin of pro-abortion radicals more than Students for Life Action. But frankly, standing up to the pro-abortion mob day in and day out can be grueling. I mean, I can attest to that. That's why I'm asking you to join me in encouraging these young pro-life leaders. Text Liz to 20401 to sign your statement of support for pro-life students. This simple action will go a long way to lift up the next generation and encourage them to not back down in the face of attacks by pro-abortion radicals. That's LIZ to 20401 to tell pro-life students you have their backs in the battle to end abortion. Text Liz to 20401 to tell pro-life students on the front lines that you have their backs. Okay, so check out this statistic. Most moms don't actually want to send their children to daycare. They feel coerced. 4 out of 5 parents, we'll get to moms in just a second, 4 out of 5 parents say that young children don't get enough attention or care if they are in daycare compared to when they are at home with their mom or their dad. That's the vast majority. It's like, you know how we always talk about the fact that while abortion is one of the most polarizing discussions in our country, there's actually a majority consensus that among both Republicans and Democrats, both people who identify as pro-life and people who identify as pro-choice, that we shouldn't have abortion in the 3rd trimester, we shouldn't have abortion in the 2nd trimester. The pro-abortion people will never tell you that, but there's a huge majority consensus if you actually pull people on when they think abortion should be illegal. It's just the debate is very polarizing. The public narratives, the lobbying, the advertising is very polarizing. That's the same with this. The vast majority of parents agree that it's better for young children to be with their parents. And 9 out of 10 parents, that's 90% of parents, say that it's best for young children if one parent can stay home with the child. Then we have mothers. 80% of mothers say that they would prefer to stay home with their children. That's 8 out of 10 moms who wish that they could be stay-at-home moms. So think about that for a second. Think about the number of women who work and send their children to daycare, and they really don't want to. They feel like it's their last resort. They feel like they have to do it, but they don't actually want to. So the culture has convinced them that this is what they need to do, but in their heart, they wish that they could stay home and take care of their kids. So this, I think, is an important point to make, because when the left, like Media Matters, criticizes conservatives for encouraging young women to be moms, it's not that conservatives are trying to plant that idea in young women's minds. It's that young women inherently want that, but the left comes in and tries to suffocate that inherent desire in young women by telling them that what they want is wrong and that what they really should want is what the left wants them to want, right? So you can see what a serious cultural issue, and you begin to suspect that there might be an ulterior motive behind what the left is doing here. There are also many, many people who feel like they don't have any choice, whether it's because they're single parents, whether it's because of finances. They say, well, listen, yes, I would prefer not to do this, but I don't have a choice. And this is also because, and I know that this is going to be a difficult truth for some people to hear, but this is also because many young women have been lied to culturally. They've been duped by the cultural narrative on other issues, whether that's premarital sex, whether that's attachment to certain material goods or a certain standard of living, luxuries that they don't actually need, but they do need a second income for if they want to enjoy them. They could do without it if they just had one income and stayed home with their children, but culture tells them that they need that. Society tells them that in order to be have a certain social status, you have to have these material items. And so they sacrifice what they want to do and what they believe is best for their children by sending them to daycare. So it all like is starting to look a little bit different, right? So then we turn to like the socialization argument and the impact that daycare has on children. And this is what the left will never tell you. This is what daycares never tell you. This is what you never hear before you actually send your child to a daycare. What you hear is, oh, they'll be socialized here. They'll learn to interact. They'll be better at interacting with their peers. And that's actually false. It's incredibly destructive for your child to send them to daycare. Again, I'm not sitting here feeling contempt for moms and dads who send their kids to daycare. I hope that when you hear this, you're like, listen, I've always felt that I didn't want to, and I wasn't sure how to make this work, but this is a pretty serious reason that we need to consider here. So Canada, in Quebec, Canada, in 1997, they launched a universal childcare program. So you could send your kid to daycare for free. And as a result, tons of moms sent their kids to this daycare, this free daycare, and went back to work. And it became a case study where these children between the ages of 2 and 4 were studied as they went to daycare and then continued to be observed by researchers to see what impacts, not just when they were in daycare or in the immediate aftermath in kindergarten or first grade, but into their adolescence, into their teenage years and beyond, to see what impact daycare had on them compared to the placebo group, right? Which is, well, I guess it's not a placebo group, but the control group, which is children that did not go to daycare. And this is what was found. And I'm going to read this directly from IF Studies. On average, 2 to 4-year-old children who had been in daycare showed significant increases in anxiety, aggression, and hyperactivity, and experienced more hostile, inconsistent parenting and lower quality parent-child relationships compared to children who had not attended. That's just 2 to 4-year-olds. As children grew older, these negative outcomes did not dissipate. Among 5 to 9-year-olds, the social emotional problems not only persisted, but in some cases increased, particularly for boys with the most elevated behavioral problems. Follow-up studies conducted 20 years after the program's inception further revealed the negative social emotional outcomes associated with attending childcare. These persisted through adolescence into young adulthood. Among young people from ages 12 to 20, self-reported health and life satisfaction decreased significantly. And then, and maybe this isn't a surprise when you have social, emotional, and behavioral issues, it came hand in hand with Quebec saw an increase in crime. The scale-up of universal childcare in Quebec was also associated with a subsequent sharp and contemporaneous increase in criminal behavior, as the rate of crime conviction jumped 22%. 22%. So on an individual basis, it was bad for children, observably through adulthood, and societally, it was bad for society because crime increased by 22%. That's a very significant number here. That's not just an isolated study in Quebec here. And you can see, again, why this is such a critical cultural issue. When I'm talking to other moms, especially young moms, about the style of parenting that my husband and I have adopted, I always describe it kind of jokingly, kind of laughingly, but kind of not, as based mothering. And people are like, oh, what is based mothering? And I say based mothering is based in reality. It's not based on a cultural narrative. It's not based on a societal pressure. It's not based on what's the easiest. It's based on the reality of what a mother's relationship was intended to be with her child, how a mother was intended to be bonded with her child, how a mother was intended to care for her child, and not based on any other factor. Like I said, I reorganized my entire work life so I could practice based mothering, based in reality. And the reality lies in these statistics. So here in the United States, the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development Study of Early Child Care, you should see the acronym for that, did a study on almost 1,500 children from birth onwards. And I'm going to tell you what they found in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about American Hartford Gold. I don't mean to sound doom and gloom here, but I feel like we are on the brink of a massive financial crisis. It's not really a matter of if, it's more a matter of when this is going to hit. I mean, we saw Silicon Valley Bank collapse, and then Signature Bank collapse, and then First Republic Bank collapse. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen admitted to us that the FDIC and the Fed, who rescued those banks, are in the future going to pick and choose which banks they rescue based on essentially wokeness. So I wonder, is our money really safe in this system? And I'll be honest and tell you, I don't feel confident that it is. That's why I highly recommend you do what I did, called the only precious metals dealer I trust, American Hartford Gold. They make it simple and easy to protect your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one short phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. If you call them right now, they'll give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 866-781-7499. That's 866-781-7499, or text Liz to 65532. Again, the phone number is 866-781-7499, or if you prefer text messaging, you can text Liz to 65532. So this study in the United States found that if you send your child to daycare, it can potentially increase your children's academic skills just at the time they enter kindergarten. It doesn't continue after that. Just the day they enter kindergarten, they might be more academically advanced, maybe. It doesn't seem to me to be a very stellar argument because kindergarten, it's kindergarten. However, if you send your child to daycare for essentially full-time, 30 hours maybe, that during infancy and toddlerhood, there are significant social emotional outcomes, negative social emotional outcomes, all the way into adolescence. So again, I'm quoting from this IF Studies, which says, by age 4.5, children who had spent more than 30 hours per week in childcare had on average worse outcomes in every area of social emotional development: weaker social competence, more behavior problems, and greater conflict with adults at rates 3 times higher than their peers. The number of hours spent in childcare continued to predict negative social emotional outcomes into the 3rd and 6th grades. At both points, children who had experienced at least 30 hours per week of non-parental care were rated by teachers as having worse social skills and poorer work habits. Children who had spent more time in center-based rather than home-based childcare had the highest rates of behavior problems and conflict with teachers, and by age 15, the link between hours in childcare and problem behaviors was still nearly the same as it had been at age 4.5. Adolescents from both high and low socioeconomic backgrounds who had spent more than 30 hours per week in any type of paid care before age 4.5 had higher average rates of risk-taking behavior, such as alcohol, tobacco, and drug use, stealing or harming property, and participating in unsafe activities. So in other words, what happened, the study that was done in Quebec and the study that was done in the United States, they parallel each other. First, you see the very negative social and behavioral impacts of daycare on children. And then you see that continue through middle school, through adolescence, through high school, and it translates into risky behavior and even to crime. So you have to sit back and ask yourself, oh my goodness, is this really worth it? What are we doing to our children, and why does this happen? Now, there are a lot of theories on why this is. Theories from, well, when children are away from their parents, especially when they're young, their cortisol levels go up. They're under stress, and if you're under extended periods of stress, especially in early childhood, then your risky behavior. Your chances of risky behavior also goes up exponentially as you get older. There's that theory. There's the theory that children are supposed to be intimately bonded to their parents, and that when they're not, they don't learn how to, they have no security, right? They have no security to be like, oh, if something happens, then I can go back to my mother. I can make prudent decisions. I can look to this parent, this mom, and this dad for cues on whether what I'm doing is right or wrong or good or bad or moral or immoral or dangerous or safe. And it's probably a combination of all of that. The reason why is maybe the subject of a different show, but it brings us to the question, and again, this isn't a personal referendum on anybody listening to the show. I hope that if you send your child to daycare that you're just interested in hearing about this. I think that you are. I think that my audience is always interested in facts and figures and data and research and cultural phenomenons that no one else is talking about. And we often reorganize our lives based on new information. But the political question is, why do politicians subsidize this when the outcomes are negative? Because when you subsidize something, you're going to get more of it. That's the most obvious principle in the world. When you subsidize something, you are encouraging it. You will get more of it. And it seems that daycare should be the opposite of subsidized. If it has such a negative effect on our children, then we should actually be discouraging it. And when I say discouraging it, I don't mean shaming people for it. I mean enabling people to stay home which starts with telling young women, the majority of young women who actually want to stay home with their children, that that's a good thing. It's a proper thing. It's a moral thing. It's a really powerful thing. Your career's probably not that powerful. A career's a career. The material goods that we create in the marketplace, sure, they can provide for our family, and that's good, but like, our work is vapor. What's not vapor is the soul of your child that you're shepherding through life. The most powerful people in the world are mothers that stay home with their children because they are creating the next generation of Americans. And perhaps right there, we have the answer of why the government is subsidizing it, because they don't want women, they don't want mothers and fathers to be shaping children. They want to be shaping children to believe things like queer theory and critical race theory and revisionist history of the United States, anti-Americanism that suits their leftist political agenda. And maybe you're listening to the show and you aren't super political and you're like, well, that's a super far stretch, but well, welcome to the Liz Wheeler Show. This is what we talk about here. We talk about the real stuff. We talk about sometimes the harsh truth about politics. It's also just a matter of GDP, right? When women are in the workplace, businesses benefit more. But at what cost to our society, right? Like, is it better for America to have a higher GDP, but to have a younger generation that's basically going to tank the economy because of their terrible social problems? Because crime also costs a lot of money, and so do mental health issues, and so do broken marriages, which these people who've been in daycare are going to set themselves up for if they have an attachment and a bonding problem. The whole question is a question that the conservative movement hasn't grappled with the way that we ought to, given the negative ramifications of what's happening. I thought this controversy between Alex Clark and Media Matters was really interesting, not only because I'm a mother, but because of the political ramifications of what we're talking about. And I hope that you thought it was really interesting too. Also, this is very interesting. So a lot of woke corporations have incentivized their employees to abort their babies by, and this is since Roe v. Wade was overturned, by offering bonuses for employees to take like an abortion vacation or to pay for travel to go out of state if the company is based in a state where abortion is restricted or illegal, to pay for travel for an employee to go to a different state to obtain an abortion. It's really grotesque and awful. But one company is doing the opposite. One company is offering their employees baby bonuses. What is a baby bonus? A baby bonus is $5,000. This company, by the way, is Public Square. We've talked about Public Square before. They're a great company. Public Square is offering $5,000 to their employees if they have a baby or if they adopt a child. And I saw this and I thought, this is amazing. So often we as conservatives and Republicans play defense in the culture war. This is playing offense. This is doing something active and proactive to counter what the left is doing on abortion. I absolutely love this. I also love Public Square because they're the same company that offers alternative places for you to shop. So like you can go to their app and you can type Target and they'll give you a whole bunch of alternative retailers that share our values so you don't have to shop at the woke corporations. I have this app. I love it. This is not an ad. This is just me telling you what I like. But they're offering baby bonuses, and I think that is the most wonderful cultural influence. And if we did more of this, our society and our country would be a lot better off. So Riley Gaines, you know her because she's fighting against men being allowed to participate in women's sports. She swam for the University of Kentucky. She swam against Leah Thomas and was defeated by Leah Thomas, even though Riley Gaines should have been the champion. Riley Gaines testified to Congress about biological men in women's sports. And there's one part of this that I think is just one of the best moments that I have seen all week. A leftist in Congress claimed that the best female athletes can defeat men. There's no proof that biological men or that biological women are weaker than biological men. And Riley Gaines just totally drops her. Take a look at this.
Women
you
and
don't
some that are
believe
shorter.
that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think. How many female members of the NBA do you see?
Well, I can say that, there's been this news article about men that think that they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, right? That they think that they could actually score a point on her. And it's just not the case. She is stronger than that.
What's your experience, Ben? Male, female?
Both Serena and Venus lost to the 203rd ranked male tennis player, which they're phenoms for women. My experience, my husband, he swam at University of Kentucky as well. In terms of accolades and in terms of national ranking, I was a much better swimmer than him. He could kick my butt any day of the week without trying.
The 203rd ranked man defeated Serena and Venus Williams. And I'm not laughing at them. I'm not laughing. They didn't do anything wrong by competing with him. It's just a perfect example. My swimming coach from high school used to tell us when us girls would get a little, honked off, that boys who weren't as good, like Riley Gaines was explaining, boys who weren't as good as us could still defeat us. He would say, listen, you actually have to compare girls and boys the way that shoe sizes are. How a size 6 girl's shoe is different than a size 6 boy's shoe. A size 6 girl's shoe is actually smaller than a size 6 boy's shoe. And I actually thought that was a pretty apropos comparison because it really, truly is true. It's also why, remember when the U.S. women's soccer team was talking about fair pay and how they do the same thing as men do? And they don't draw the audience because they're not as good. They're not as good. They're good for women, which is fine. It's entertaining. I enjoy women's soccer, but they're not as good. They're not as fast. They're not as strong as men are, which is why a U15 boys team defeated the U.S. women's national soccer team. It's not an anomaly. There's not one example of this. It wasn't just Serena and Venus that lost the 203rd ranked male tennis players. It wasn't just the U.S. women's national soccer team. It might have even been the World Cup team. It was either the national team or the World Cup team, probably potato, that lost to this U15 boys team. This is the reality. This is biology. This is truth. We all know this. Even that leftist, well, I guess she didn't know her facts. She was just saying, they're stronger. Well, what is that based on? What is your proof based on? You're just saying that because you want it to be true, but it's not. It's not actually true. Something else that's not actually true, even though he wants it to be true, President Trump talked to Bret Baier about the COVID vaccine, and this is really my biggest trepidation about President Trump leading the Republican primary right now is his opinion on, yes, the COVID-19 jab. The COVID-19 jab, which Trump did preside over during the last year of his administration. He was the one who pushed Operation Warp Speed. Then, yes, he left office, and Biden was the one that rolled out the vaccine. His explanation for why he takes the position on the vaccine that he takes, well, I'll just let you hear it for yourself. Take a listen.
Did the COVID vaccine work? It's such an interesting question because not only that, I also did the Regenerons of the world, we did a tremendous job on that. But we had a vaccine. Now you have different COVIDs. You had COVID-19 and then you have different COVIDs. But we had original was COVID-19, which was the roughest one. So I have a Democrat friend who's very smart. Hopefully he votes for me, but he's very smart. He said, I don't understand one thing about you. I watch your rallies. They're incredible. You talk about beating ISIS. You talk about taxes. You talk about regulation. You talk about everything. But you never said that. I've never heard you talk about how the incredible job you did with the vaccines, because as you know, I got them done in 9 months, and it was supposed to take anywhere from 5 to 12 years. I broke their ass, okay? And you know who doesn't like me too much? The FDA. Because they were very bureaucratic, and I got it done. And he said, you may have saved throughout the world, 100 million people, and you never talk about it. I said, I really don't want to talk about it because as a Republican, it's not a great thing to talk about because for some reason, it's just not.
For some reason?
Yeah, for some reason, because people love the vaccines and people hate the vaccines.
I love Bret Baier's question there. For some reason, do you not know the real reason? Listen, I've been pretty honest with you guys about the fact that I'm not trying to withhold who I'm going to vote for in the Republican primary. I will tell you when I decide who I'm going to vote for. I don't know yet. I'm not someone who views a politician as a celebrity. I don't believe in this political version of absolute loyalty. I will vote for the Republican candidate in the primary who I think will do the best job as president. So you can spend the next few months convincing me. What I will say to you is if I decide not to vote for Donald Trump, this will be the reason why. This will be the reason why. If I decide not to vote for Donald Trump, it won't be because he was indicted by Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. It won't be because he was indicted by Jack Smith, the special counsel. It won't be because of anything to do with classified documents or election integrity claims or some of the seemingly incoherent and nutty things that he posts on Truth Social. It won't be any of those reasons why. It won't even be because he castigates pro-lifers as the reason that Republicans basically lost the 2022 elections. It won't be because of that. So I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I'm not a single issue voter. I vote very holistically. Who do I think can defeat the Democrat? Who do I think understands the reality of the political enemy that we face? And maybe it'll be Trump. If it's Trump, I'm going to be very excited to support Trump. If it's not Trump, I'll be very excited to support some other candidate. But if I decide ultimately not to vote for Trump, I'm pretty sure that this will be the reason why. Because he doesn't understand the reality of this political enemy that we are all facing. Maybe he didn't have to suffer the same repercussions from that political enemy as we do. But this is what we're facing, and we will face it again and again and again in all aspects of our lives if we don't acknowledge what it is so that we can recalibrate our politics to fight against it. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for Trump. I'm just saying if I don't, then this will be the reason why. Interested in your thoughts? Let me know at lizwheeler.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.